Are we good to go, everybody? Looks like we have almost everybody seated. Good morning, everybody.
I'm not online yet.
Today is February 15th. We are here at the Nacogdoches Rec Center at 10 a.m. for the next installment of the Region I, East Texas Regional Water Planning Group meeting. And it is, 10:02, 10:03? I'll officially call the meeting to order. Why don't we start out with an invocation from Mr. David?
We have to. Let's bow and pray together. Our Father, we give you thanks for this day and for the blessings that you've given us in it. We thank you for abundant rain and for the water resources in our state, in our region. We are humbled by the responsibility that you've given us to lead in this area and to represent our neighbors throughout East Texas and indeed the entire state. And we pray for your guidance, for wisdom and good judgment as we deliberate on that. We pray for our state leaders and national leaders and ask you to grant us wise and humble leaders and make us a people worthy of that. We ask, Lord, your blessings on our travel back home and your grace upon us today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Play ball.
That's right.
Agenda item number 3, notice of meeting. Ms. Cheryl, did we get all that properly taken care of? Yes. Much appreciated. And item number 4, roll call, if you would take care of that for us.
David Alders. Here. Chris Davis. Guess not. Kate Dietz.
Here.
Okay. David Gorsuch.
Here.
Scott Hall. Here. Kelly Holcomb. Here. Fred Jackson. Here. John Martin.
Yes, ma'am.
Matthew McBroom.
Here.
John McFarland.
Here.
Matthew Mattier. Here. David Montaigne. Monty Shank. Here. Mike Snyder.
Here.
Rob Starr. Terry Stelly.
Here.
Emily Whitworth. Chris Weisinger.
Here.
We're good. $14. We're good.
We have 14, so we have plenty for a quorum this morning. Item 5 on the agenda is public comments. Do we have anybody in attendance who would like to chime in on our events this morning? I see nobody. Moving right along to agenda item 6, consideration and approval of the minutes of the January 10th, 2024 meeting. I'll consider a motion on those minutes at this time. That was a motion by Monty. Do we have a second? Second. By Mr. Jackson. Any comments, questions? Everybody's read them, I hope. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Not hearing any, it passes unanimously. Moving along to item number 7, reports from the city of Nacogdoches. Ms. Cheryl,
She doesn't have anything, is what she said.
Okie dokie, nothing to report from Cheryl. Item number 8, reports of adjoining regions' activities. Region C, David Montaigne is not online this morning. Is anybody from the Sabine River Authority out there online who might have an update? Not hearing anybody, we'll go to Region D. Mr. McFarland.
Region D will be meeting next Wednesday in Pittsburgh, Texas. We have
Thank
not
you,
met
s-
since then.
Thank you, sir. Region H, Mr. Hall. Interregional, I hate that word, I don't know why, I have a hard time with interregional liaison. Mr. Holcomb.
We stumble with it all the time as well. The IRPC, yeah. We had a meeting on the, a week ago today, actually, where we approved the plan that is due to the legislature by March, end of March. And when that document is actually finalized, they're still in the formatting phase of all of it, but the document was substantially complete when we approved it. We should be getting a copy of that, all the planning group members, at some point in the very near future.
Are there any interesting highlights, recommendations coming out of it this year?
Honestly, no. I mean, it's.
I'm good with
somewhat
status quo
perfunctory.
myself.
Yeah, it's somewhat perfunctory in my opinion, but
Good.
how do you increase, coordination? That's the issue. And we've debated that topic a lot. And how do you do that? And how do you get the public more engaged when the public doesn't really care until you run out of water?
Until you run out of water. And then,
We've been discussing
duck and
this.
cover.
David, you've been
Yeah.
on this thing for 20-some-odd years. I've been right there
You
behind you.
just tell them to agree with you, then everything will be all right.
Agree with me, but we have problems getting people engaged, and it's a problem that continues to this day.
Yes.
And we do our best.
Absolutely.
But we have completed our charges that the legislature gave us.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
That's gonna be an ongoing work, isn't it?
Item number 9, reports from standing committee. Executive Committee, John Martin. We did not have a committee meeting. I think we're rocking and rolling. I don't foresee having one anytime in the near future at this point unless something pops up. Finance Committee, Mr. Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a short meeting this morning. The city of Nacogdoches is continuing to pay the bills. We are working through the process of financial reporting. That's our primary conversation this morning was developing a set of reports for the planning group so we all know where we stand. I think Cheryl has been a little overwhelmed with taking over the responsibilities of the planning group and just trying to get things cleaned up, as it were. And our finances are in good shape. We owe Plummer some money, but everybody knows we owe them money. We're going to continue to owe them money as we work through this process. So, but we're in good shape financially. The locally collected admin funds, invoices for that will be going out soon. Other than that, we have nothing to report.
Do we finally get to 100% county
No.
participation?
Nope.
We never have achieved that.
Never have. Probably never will.
Yeah, I remember being a couple. One of them's kind of close to your hometown.
No comment.
Next on the list, C, Bylaws Committee. Anything for us, David?
Yes. But not anything in terms of a specific recommendation today, but email conversations with Cheryl and with you. I think there are a couple of problems that have surfaced that are, interpretation kind of issues down the road if we don't address it. So I anticipate we will address those matters. They're not that difficult. They're not, really important. But they're still, if bylaws are important, it's important to have them right. But they're not earth-shattering. But we will address them. I think Cheryl's probably addressed most of the formatting issues, but there's one article that I think we'll fold into another, and it's very, very short. So we'll do some work that's gonna require, it's not just formatting and grammar, so it's gonna require me to come back with a report, probably at our next meeting, but sometime during 24 for sure. So we'll get those to you.
Thank you, sir. Technical Committee, Mr. Hall.
Yeah, the technical committee has not met, but I did want to bring up the consultant report last meeting had a significant change in the reservoirs in the Natchez Basin with, I believe it was a 27% reduction in yield basin-wide on the extended data set for the WAM naturalized flows were extended from 96 to 2018, and we have a new drought of record in the 2010 and 11 drought on that. That reduction in yield seems to primarily be driven by changes in the evaporation record. Something just doesn't seem right about it. So we're digging into it. We'll find out more and report back later. But I mean, I can tell you right now that no matter how wet a year was, evaporation always exceeded it. You know, so in a super wet year, we had evaporation that exceeded it. We had a dry year, we had lower evaporation rates. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So we haven't put our finger on it yet. We'll get back to you and report on that, and we'll just leave it there for now. That's a mystery, and we're digging deeper into it, into report.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask Lane a question?
Sure.
If Scott's research points out some anomaly, is it possible to change those evaporation rates for the Neches River Basin?
Well, there's a couple of things going on. We are going to discuss this issue with TCEQ, and that would be on the pathway to them potentially modifying the WAM. I don't see them doing that within our timeframes that we need. But if the group decided, if the planning group here decided to use an alternate set of data that Scott is talking about, that would need to be an additional hydrologic variance. We've already gotten one hydrologic variance from the group, so we would need to include that in the hydrologic variances that are allowed, so that a new hydrologic variance would have to be submitted and approved before that was used in lieu of the WAM that's posted up on,
Right.
that we were gonna use.
So Bridget, if an alternate set of data was presented, I mean, how does that affect your budget? Or would it be freezing nickels?
So we've had a few, so we've been in conversations regarding this, just what that even means. We have some messages into Texas Water Development Board as well to kind of figure out, get to the bottom of where some of this is happening, if it requires a new hydrologic variance. I mean, we could go that route. It just depends on the timing of it, if there's enough time to even rerun everything at this point. By the time we get to the bottom of it, I don't know, and I can let Jordan speak to this as well, but we've kind of talked offline about this of, is there even enough time to rerun an entire thing for this cycle?
So my understanding is the evaporation record goes into that whole extended data set and helps derive the naturalized flows for that extended data set. It's a deep, deep dive, and it's beyond, I think, where the consultant team is for this right now. It's going to be, we've got to go all the way back to TCEQ and get things reworked. So I was trying to lead us in a way that we're working on it, give us some time to get to the bottom of it, and we'll get there. But a protracted discussion here is not going to solve anything today.
So at the very least, there'll be some notes made in the plan that point this out.
It's more informational at this point, and even in a few slides, we kind of have a footnote saying that this is in the works, and if it continues to be a standing issue, we can put some notes within the plan about it. But it's more FYI for discussion and just to keep it in the back of our minds. As we move forward, we might have some more updates on it, but it may not necessarily be something that is a full overhaul that is going to be occurring.
Make sure we put it in the public record.
Yeah, exactly. And we did coordinate with Water Development Board, and as Lan said, they're coordinating with TCEQ on that. So we'll make sure to keep you all updated on those discussions.
Thank you.
Next, item E, Nominations Committee. Mr. Monty.
Nomination committee met this morning. Just to summarize and not get into it, we have vacancies in, this is what I have. I can be corrected. municipalities, industry, small business, and public. We made a recommendation, the committee agreed to nominate a gal named Jenny Sanders, and she works for, she's got a master's from A&M. She works for, I didn't even write it down. Yeah. Did y'all hear that?
Texas Longleaf Alliance.
Yeah. And this all started at the end of '22. So I had talked to her 3 times, and she was willing to serve. And so I made the recommendation to the committee, and the committee backed me. And so we're making a recommendation that we nominate Jenny Sanders
So real quick,
to represent the public category.
let's jump to item number 10, which is discussion and possible action to approve recommendations from the nominations committee for the appointment of voting members to the East Texas Regional Water Planning Group. And pardon that interruption, but needed to get it in. If you make that recommendation and we get a second on, a motion and a second on it?
I make that recommendation. Pardon?
Public.
Public.
And what was her full name again?
Jenny Sanders. JennySanders.
Do we have a?
She's from Apple Springs. That's where her residence is.
She and I have worked together on several projects. She and I have worked together on several projects. Currently, we're working on some projects looking at water yield changes as a result of longleaf pine restoration kind of work. So she has some depth of experience in terms of water yield calculations and water benefits. And we're currently working with a project with Microsoft as the big funder, where we're turning 2,500 acres back into longleaf pine savanna, and they want to know how much water goes into Lake Livingston as a result. And we've got another project, hopefully we're going to get funded from a major corporate donor too. She's had some extensive work in that aspect of water resources.
She knows the conservation area very well.
Yeah.
So was that a second by you, Matt?
Yes, sir, that's a second. Just get a little back.
Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a conflict. I need to abstain from voting. Ms. Sanders was appointed to my board of directors a few months ago.
You got that down in notes, Miss Cheryl, for us? We'll need to make note of that in the minutes. Anybody else have comments or questions? All in favor of the motion to appoint Jenny Sanders to the public position, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Nominations Committee. Item 11, report from a consultant team with discussion and possible action by Regional Water Planning Group. Item A, Ms. Bridget.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. For those of you online, I think if you don't already have it open, if you go to the Region I website under meeting documents, if you would like to go ahead and open up some of those handouts, it would help for y'all to follow along on some of the, especially some of the technical memorandum items. We will be using the slides kind of as a guideline of where we're at, but not necessarily projecting every single page of this as we walk through it. So that could help to have that open, but we will certainly cue to where you need to be open to. So the bulk of the meeting today is that we need to focus on passing the technical memorandum. We're going to try to make this relatively painless for you all, so bear with me here. Hopefully it's a short and easy one, but we will see. So again, bulk of the discussion, I just want to give an overview of the schedule, mostly talking about the technical memorandum and what those pieces are. The items in bold, infeasible water management strategies, the proposed list of feasible strategies, and comments and action on the technical memorandum are the 3 main items that we are seeking action on today. The technical memorandum is due to Texas Water Development Board by March 4th and requires a 2-week public comment period, which we have gone through, and we left a little bit of wiggle room just in case there. And then lastly, we'll finish off with a notice to proceed for additional scope of work for task 5B.
Have we received any written comment?
No, I've received a few minor editorial comments, not from public, but I know I've received some from those of you in the group. So we have a kind of a running list of that, but so far, just some really more editorial items. So in terms of the schedule, I know it's small. We put this up every time. I've also posted it in the handouts. And for those of you here, if you are just interested to see what the Texas Water Development Board schedule is, we're mostly focused on lines like 20 through 28. From here out, it's just the bottom 2 lines for the rest of the planning cycle. After we turn in the technical memorandum, there's just 2 bottom lines of the initial plan and the final plan, and that's all we've got. So we've actually made it through the bulk of the items in our 5-year cycle. But zooming into what we're actually looking at, this is kind of the schedule coming up. So you are here, the top line, February 2024 is revise and finalize the technical memorandum to be submitted by March 4th to Texas Water Development Board. And then pretty much we have 1 year after that, March 4th, 2024 through March 3rd of 2025 to pull together all of the chapters of the initial prepared plan. And so when we get to the end of the meeting, we'll talk kind of what the schedule needs to look like for meetings to get us to that point within a year. So first up, we just want to give an update of where we were based from last time and how we got to the items that are in the technical memorandum. So last time we had talked about demand allocations and our supply options that we have. And so this was a figure that was shown during the last meeting. So earlier in the year of 2023, we identified the demand projections and the existing supply. For those supplies, they were allocated to the different utilities that were planning to use those to help meet those demands. And any demand that was unmet is considered a need. Alternatively, if there was extra there, that would, instead of a need, that would be considered called a surplus. So just keep those 2 terminology, needs and surplus, in mind as we move forward. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Jordan. Freese and Nichols did a bulk of the work on the supply and allocation side. So if you want to go ahead and give an update.
Yeah, and so as we discussed the last meeting, we have all of our available supplies from, water rights for surface water, running through the water availability model. We have groundwater availability determined through the GMA process, what we call the groundwater availability modeling. And so for Region I, based off that analysis, we determined there's about 3 million or above 3 million acre feet per year throughout the planning horizon. But the next step after determining the available supply is determining what is actually available right now to be used by water users, whether that be municipal, industrial, irrigation, all the different water use types that we have demands for in the regional water planning process. And so based off this analysis, looking at existing contracts, existing infrastructure, historical usage, we were able to allocate out supplies, and that's what you see with the yellow bar right there, is that's the total allocated supply in Region I. It's about 1 million acre feet throughout the planning horizon. So, I guess this graph, really shows in Region I there is a lot of existing supply available, and there's still a lot left out there that hasn't been developed to be accessible to current users.
Okay, so based on that, we went through and looking at the allocated supply and the needs that are out there. So within the database, all of this information was put in the database, and you kind of click a couple of magic buttons and click run, and it comes out and spits out kind of what the difference is. And so this is just a snapshot in time as of 2 weeks ago. This is an ongoing process, and so for the next year, we'll be looking at different ways and different water management strategies for all of the water utilities. But this is just an initial list of water utilities that are showing up within the database as needs, just on that kind of that first run. So currently, out of the 190 WUGs, there's a total of 15 of them on this list with identified needs. And so some of those, especially the ones with stars with single asterisks, are ones that are requiring coordination with other regions. So some of that might just be resolved by some of the strategies that some of the other regions are working with. And so some of those will fall off, and then in the meantime, we will also be having conversations with these as well as the others that are on there to make sure that we have identified strategies to meet each of these needs within the system. And as Jordan had shown on the last figure, it's not that you don't have enough water to do it. We just need to recognize the different strategies and projects that are actually going to be supplying them the water. So in terms of a summary of needs for Region I, so that was, the last one was specifically on the WUG level. This one right here is just kind of a bigger picture. You can see here in the figure that in terms of needs that are there, manufacturing is the bulk of that. There's a large number of future manufacturing demand growth without existing contracts at the moment. So the rest of it kind of dwarfs in comparison. If we take out that manufacturing and zoom in on kind of that upper bar, you can see the breakdown of the non-manufacturing needs. So there is an increasing need identified for municipal WUGs over time, shown by that yellow portion there on the bottom. There's also some needs for new power generation facilities in Anderson and Henderson counties. And there's also some MAG limitations. So this is just summarizing pretty much the details of the information that we showed last time. Again, preliminary information within the database, and this is what will be used moving forward to help identify water management strategy projects.
Yeah, and I think one thing to highlight with all this information we're presenting today is it is draft and it can change. So pretty much this and any information that's going into the technical memorandum, if y'all see anything in there that, you know, raises any flags or you think might need updates, please let us know and we can coordinate with you and make sure we're getting the right information in there.
And that does lead to a good point. So I was at Brazos G on Tuesday, and somebody had put it in a very good metaphor, in that think of this like, you know, your project in high school. You've been assigned a very large report at the end of the school year, and your teacher doesn't wait till the day before it's due to say, hey, how's it going? They go halfway through the year and say, can you give me an outline, show me where you're at, turn in something to show that you're actually doing your homework. And that's what this is. So the copy that's online is as of 2 weeks ago. Numbers have already changed. With further refinement, it will continue to change over the next year. This is our way of showing the group and Texas Water Development Board that, yes, we are working on this. It's not being put off to the last minute and just thrown together mismatch. So these are the numbers as it was when we took that snapshot in time, just to show where we are as a region and that we are on top of it. So keep that in mind. We're not really here to approve the actual literal numbers that are within the database tables. It's to just check that we have done it and that we're including everything we need to look at. So with that, just based on what we've discussed on the demand allocations and water needs, no action on this, just are there any questions so far with kind of what has gotten us to this point before we jump into what's actually in the technical memorandum?
Anybody online have any questions? Cool.
Okay, first up, infeasible water management strategies. Just as a recap, at our October meeting, we went through and approved the process of the analysis for infeasible water management strategies. We also presented that, hooray, there were none identified for Region I. At that meeting, though, we decided we did not want to take action and actually do anything with that information. We were just going to kind of put that on hold, make sure nothing new came up, no new information to light that might change that by the time the technical memorandum came around. However, we do need to seek official approval and action on that to be able to move forward with the technical memorandum piece, and that required also part of the 2-week period. So as a recap of what we discussed at the October meeting, when we went through what needed to be analyzed for a potential infeasible water management strategy, these 7 were the ones that kind of came up that required a little bit of a further deep dive in the fall, which we did. We've reached out to each one of these. This table here is just for reference and can be provided in more detail to Texas Water Development Board should they need any additional information on how and why the potential infeasible strategies are actually feasible. So most of these, either affirmative action has already been taken or it does not require any kind of infrastructure and would not be a hindrance to be able to put that into action fairly quickly. The largest on that if it was not feasible would have been Lake Columbia, would have required a major amendment, but it's already being evaluated by 3 entities and has a valid state water right permit in place already. So That was the biggest concern on the list, but it is not a concern. So, long story short, we have no infeasible strategies, and that makes life much easier for Region I. So with that, again, it required a 2-week public comment period, as well as pausing during this meeting to make sure there are no public comments. And with that, so for the sake of the technical memorandum, attachment 8, which we will also walk through later, is just it's a single page. It's a requirement for the technical memorandum to say either you have to talk about your infeasible strategies or put a statement saying there are none. So attachment 8 within the technical memorandum is basically a single page that says there are none. And if they have any questions about that or would like more information, we've got that table and additional information. So with that, I'll hand this over to Mr. Martin for action on this item.
Does anybody have any comments or questions on the infeasible strategies? Online folks, anybody? Not hearing anything, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
We're approving that there are none, right?
Correct.
Correct.
No infeasible,
Approving that there are none, yes.
null set.
Approve the results of the infeasible management
Exactly.
strategy analysis.
I so move the approval of the infeasible water management strategy, of which there were none identified.
Thank you.
Second.
And we have a second by Mr. Holcomb. Any additional comments or questions before I call for a vote? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Back to you, Ms. Bridget.
Okay, next up, so we have received approval on the process to analyze the feasible water management strategies. We've taken action to approve the lack of infeasible strategies. So now that leads into where we go from here. Where are the potential feasible water management strategies, and what are we going to be looking at? We figured out the how, now what's the what? So as required by the Texas Administrative Code, there's a list here of the different types that are required to be considered, including expanded use of existing supplies, of which there are 14, new supply development, conservation and demand management, reuse of wastewater, interbasin transfers of surface water, and emergency transfers of surface water. For reference, a description of each of these is included in the technical memorandum in attachment 2. For those of you online, or if you guys need a copy here in person, we have some as handouts over there. So in attachment 2, it has a list of those. The initial attachment 2 is a memorandum that just walks through what each of these different types are and what is included in those. And continuing on at the end of attachment 2 is a table listed that is the list of any potential feasible water management strategies identified by the Regional Water Planning Group as of January 2024. We have indicated what was included in the 2016 plan and the 2021 plan, just for reference, so you guys can see what was included before. This is just a starting list. This is not exhaustive. This is where we're going to start when we're looking for things and check back for any of that were included in the last 2 cycles at least. Plus, as we talk to each of these and talk to each of you, any new ones that are brought to the table will also be included in this list as well. Anything you need to add?
Yeah, and that's just the next step in the process. Now that we've moved past the needs identification, the next step is working through the water management strategies and projects, coordinating with entities across the region to make sure we're capturing any strategies or projects that need to be included in the regional water plan.
So with that, again, you can refer to attachment 2, but at this point, we do need to seek action in approving the proposed list of initial, like I said, a starting point of the potentially feasible water management strategies.
I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
I have a question.
Did I
Kate,
hear?
This is Kate.
Go ahead.
Yes, Kate.
Yes, so on that, the listing of the different strategies, and Bridget, I'm pretty sure you repeated this 3 times, but I'm making sure. So if it was identified as a potentially feasible water management strategy in the regional water plan in 2016, but not in 2021, we will still be considering it for this planning cycle as well.
Correct. The list on here, the ones that are Xed, that are indicated in 2016 and 2021 are more, that's our starting point. We will, at a minimum, start with those. If there are any additional that maybe it was several plans back and for some reason was taken out because it was no longer, it wasn't feasible at the time and they decided to let it drop. But for some reason, if something has changed or in the demand arena, things have been moved up on timeline and things need to be added back in, that is also acceptable. So as we reach out to each of these, or, certainly these entities do not need to wait for us to reach out to them. If they come to us with an idea, we can certainly add it to the list as well. But at a minimum, that is what we are starting with.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to make that motion, Ms. Cake?
Yes, I will make a motion for the approval of the proposed list of initial potentially feasible water management strategies.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Monty. Any more comments or questions? Not hearing anybody? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. Motion passes.
Okay, now that we've got all the pieces lined up and approved everything up to this point, now we are just to the meat of it, the technical memorandum itself. So I just want to kind of give an overview of what actually is included in the technical memorandum. Again, for those of you online, you have one large PDF. For those in person, we have provided printouts of the technical memorandum because, like I said, we are not here to approve the individual numbers. I do have one full copy in person of the full version if you need it. The handouts in person, though, we have printed out just the first page of every one of the database reports because it's about, 100 pages or so of just tables. Again, we are not here to approve the numbers. We're here to approve the content that we have all the pieces here. So the list on the slides here, it's basically a one-page cover letter with 9 attachments. The last attachment, attachment 9, are electronic model files and are not obviously included in a hard copy printout or the PDF. Those are in a folder. We can provide you those if you really want to see what the model file looks like, but it is an electronic file and will be provided to Texas Water Development Board. So we're just going to walk through each of these to make sure nobody has any major heartburn about any of them, and then seek approval at the very end after we've walked through it. So, after the cover letter, we start with attachment 1. Again, people here in person have the first page of each of the many, many tables, but if you would like, it is online if you want to dig through every single individual detail. But there are the following 7 reports. There's a report of population numbers and demand numbers. Both of those were items that were approved as part of Chapter 2 of Task 2A and 2B approved last summer, and officially approved by Texas Water Development Board in the fall. Those were just automatically brought in for whatever Texas Water Development approved. Based on that and some of the water availability modeling, the source availability results were dropped in as another table, and as well as the existing water supply. Based on that, the difference between the supply and the allocated demand resulted in a table of the needs and surplus. Lastly, there are tables that were automatically spit out by Texas Water Development Board within the database. That's a data comparison to the 2021 regional water planning numbers, as well as a source data comparison to 2021 regional water plan. So both of those were just automatic reports that get spit out, and those are kind of good starting points for us moving into the initial plan and development of the water management strategies, is taking the results of these tables and seeing where there might be red flags and outliers that we really need to identify and focus on for individual outreach over the next several months. And over the next several quarterly meetings that we will be having, we will be going through county by county and giving an update primarily on those numbers on 5, 6, and 7. I can see that the tables in the beginning, the first half of the tables will not be changing much, at all in the population and demand, but the latter half are the ones that are going to be continuously developed, and eventually those will be the final numbers that are put into the initially prepared plan. So any questions? This is all just attachment 1. It's a sizable chunk. Any questions about what goes into that or any concerns about those items at this point.
Somebody does. So, Bridget, are we being asked to approve attachment 1 today?
No, we're going to go through all the attachments. This is just, do you have any, I just wanted, because this is the, I mean, that's like 50% of
Right.
the actual PDF. In terms of actual content, though, the rest of the content's actually the rest of the attachments that really are probably have a little bit more feedback, but I know that there's a lot of reports. I don't expect us to really dig into the weeds and the numbers. So there's no action at this moment, no. Okay. Okay, moving right along, attachment 2, we have already approved this on a previous slide. Action, identification of the feasible water management strategies. So this is just to say what's there. It's the memo to say what the potentially feasible strategies were and the categories we are required to look at, as well as the list of the potential strategies that we are starting with based on the 2016 and the 2021 plans. Both of those are attachment 2 and have been approved during this meeting. Moving along, attachment 3, this, you will be required to give an update on the hydrologic variance requests and put a copy of any hydrologic variance requests to date that have been approved for any of our WAM modifications or alternative surface water models, and anything else that may have been changed and needed approval for Texas Water Development Board. These were all presented and approved during the October meeting, were submitted to Texas Water Development Board, and we received approval on those hydrologic variance requests, I believe in December of 2023. Those runs have already been done. So all of this has already been taken action upon by this group, so this is just in here for reference as a requirement for being included in the Texas Water Development Board. So all of the items in attachment 3 have already been seen and approved by this group, except for at the very end of it. Oh, nope, not at all. Everything in this attachment has already been approved. So strike that. Moving along, so attachment 4 is the memorandum on the WAM modifications. So once we get our hydrologic variance, we have a TM in here that just gives a little bit more detail about the modifications that were done for that, specifically to address the requirement listed on this first bullet. We are required to include any methodology for calculating the anticipated sedimentation rate and revising the area capacity rating curve, as well as a table of any hydrologic models used to be included in attachment 5. So you will see in attachment 4 that there is a TM in there, a short TM summarizing what those WAM modifications were, as well as a table of sedimentation rates that were used in there. And then attachment 5 has the table of the hydrologic models. The main change that I have so far versus what is currently listed on the hard copies and on the online TM is that there is a column in attachment 5 that says EA approval date. It is not pending. It was approved in December of 2023, so we will update that column to say that those models were approved for use. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute. I know I talk fast and a lot, so. Okay. I'll keep going then. Attachment 6 is a requirement to document the methodologies for groundwater availabilities to date. This was presented during the last meeting in January of the preliminary results from that, and those runs on the MAG and non-MAG. There is one question related to Brooklyn Fresh Water Supply District and Rayburn County Municipal Utility District, and verifying that aquifer in there is listed correctly. I believe we have resolved that, but that would be the only thing that might require a slight adjustment in that TM. That's the only comment, the only other comment that I have received to date related to this particular piece. So I do have that flagged.
Was that related to their source of supply?
Yes.
Being not correctly, potentially not correctly identified?
Correct.
Correct. I was under the understanding that those systems were utilizing the Catahoula It's on. They were deemed non-relevant for planning purposes within GMA 14 for the Yawa-Jackson. And when I saw Yawa-Jackson numbers, I just had to look a little bit deeper into it. And I was always under the impression that the Rayburn Country Mud and Brooklyn Freshwater utilized the Catahoula up there. And I do believe that when they redid the model, or the, what do they call it, the lithology a few years back, that there may have been a change with where that water was coming from. But either way, I just figure we should clarify it, whether it's the Catahoula or the Yawa.
Also, kind of relating to this whole situation of getting appropriate information, I may be referring cities or entities to the consultants like Rayburn Country Mud, who has submitted a loan application for a loan. I think it's to drill a new well.
Okay.
That's not in the plan. It's consistent with their existing supply. However, that ultimately ends up being named, I guess, because there's obviously the Catahoula or whatever is in our database. So if that changes due to something, then we would need to know that. So anyway, just heads up.
The volumes are really nominal, so overall, it's nothing significant. Just a clarification deal. And if they are using the Yawa, if the Yawa is present up there to a point where they're using several hundred acre-feet a year, maybe GMA 14 will take the next step into making it part of the DFCs and making it a relevant aquifer that we plan for.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we're not putting out incorrect information regardless of the amount on it. So I do have that as a note. The information here is based on what they have submitted, but we are going to reach back out and just make sure that what we have in there is correct, just in case. So that's the only comment I received so far on that particular item. And then there's some lovely tables in there summarizing that as the end of that attachment 6. Next up, attachment 7 is a brief memorandum on the region's interregional coordination efforts to date. We've got some general coordination items in there, a summary of any coordination that we have had to date with Region C, Region D, Region H, and groundwater management areas, of which I do have noted the typo that we have currently listed GMA 11 and 12 in the first sentence on page 3 of that TM. It is supposed to be GMA 11 and 14. It is correct everywhere else, just for some reason that one number got written wrong. So we are going to remove GMA 12 reference and change that to 14. Next up, attachment 8, requirements to list infeasible strategies. As we have already approved and taken action on, we have none. So luckily, our technical memorandum on here is one sentence saying we have none. So yay. But if there are any follow-up questions by the board once we send this in, when we get to the actions on here, I do have some places to give us a little wiggle room to be able to respond back to the board if they need clarification on this or any of the items to be able to justify any of the statements that we have in here. Lastly, attachment 9, as stated on the actual fly sheet, it is not included. Like I said, it is an electronic model file, so we could not print it out for you, nor would you want to see it. But if you would like it, we can send it to you for, your leisurely reading. Okay, with that, I'm going to take a drink of water and hand this over to Mr. Martin for public comment. Action on the following items. It looks like a lot of action, but we wanted to make sure that there's enough in here to approve the draft technical memorandum incorporating any revisions or comments we bring up during this meeting, authorizing us to submit to Texas Water Development Board on behalf of the Water Planning Group before the March 4th deadline, in addition to authorizing us as technical consultants to work with the chair and Texas Water Development Board to address any further revisions and or clarifications as required by the board before the deadline. With that, Mr. Martin.
So we should start with comments. Anybody have any comments or questions on the technical memorandum? I know it's pretty long, and I don't expect everybody to go through it page by page, but each one of us have basically specialties, expertises in different areas, and if you could at least spend time on each one of those issues as we go through this process, as we start knocking out chapters for the IPP. Over the next year, same deal. Use your expertise, find the chapters that mostly relate to you if you can't spend the time to go through the whole thing, and review it. That being said, I'm not seeing anybody online or here locally with any comments or questions. So I'll entertain a motion to Bridget's
Lengthy list of actions.
do we need, does one motion is that number V, that V there, number 5?
Correct. It's one long sentence of
Okay.
actions.
I have a question real quick.
Sure.
And I may have missed something, I apologize.
Not a problem.
If I have, but I think early on in one of our earlier meetings, this past maybe spring, we talked about when we got these population models, the declination in population over, so many, by 2080, whatever, that most of the counties in our GMA 11 seem to have, are losing population. And I thought we said something to the effect of in the technical memorandum, we were going to address that we may not agree with that information, just as a footnote. Is that in here somewhere or not?
I think what the outcome of that was, and those two are going to be the experts on it, is that we were able to get the population or the demand numbers to a point where it was actually more water out until like 2050 or 2060 before it actually started to tail off relative to the last plan.
Okay.
So because we then now have essentially 30 years to correct those numbers with new population data, that's where we left it.
With forthcoming population data?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's indirectly incorporated. The
Yes,
actual literal
indirectly.
response to the population discrepancies is not included in here, but through the demand development,
But
we can put it in there if we want, but.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just note that a comment like that is being placed in the appropriate chapter of the plan, chapter 2 maybe, where we do population.
Yes.
A lot of the regions are sticking that back in chapter 2. The technical memorandum is basically data.
Half of it's a database.
So I'll entertain a motion, that motion?
Just one thing, John,
Oh,
on
sure.
that, we talked at that time about the fact that municipal populations don't capture the pandemic-related growth of rural population that's not accounted for in municipalities. It's out there in the counties, and the only way to figure growth there is to somehow collect data on the number of water meters out in the county and the rural water supply corporations. And so we talked about the fact that there's no mechanism for getting that kind of data. And I don't know if between now and the next 5 years we could find out. Obviously, we interact with these people all the time, water supply corporations, and they have the data on how many meters they have and the growth in the number of meters. There should be even more direct correlation between number of meters and water consumption, water demand, than even population growth, census numbers.
I think that's kind of where we ended up, is using demand from the WUGs and the water supplies that gave us that
Well, especially for some of the ones that didn't give us information, or we couldn't get in touch with, or gave us information that may not have jived with what we were hearing, is we were able to pull some of that information. But I would say, so for the next meeting, by then we should have drafts of chapter 2, which is including the population and demand. So we'll make sure that that's in there, but I would say make special attention to that chapter and make sure that we have sufficiently covered this group's concerns related to that in chapter 2.
Any other comments? Entertain Ms. Bridget's motion.
We need a motion that approves all the foregoing, right?
The draft.
The draft, the entire draft.
Item V, discussion, and consideration, action on draft technical memorandum to authorize technical consultants to address any updates and submit to the Texas Water Development Board by March 4th. By Mr. Mature.
Ditto.
Do we have a sec? Okay, we got, I think David beat it. David. We have a motion and a second. Any additional comments, questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Do we need anything else on that? We got it all squared away
Not
for
on
you?
the TM. I'm not done yet, but the
Okay,
TM's done.
okay.
If we're lucky, this might be a record-setting fast meeting, y'all. Good job.
Yes.
I don't want to jinx it. We're not done yet, but. Okay, so moving right along, we're not done yet. The TM is behind us, but now we have to look forward. We have already done a partial approval of a notice to proceed on task 5B scope items at the October meeting, but we need approval for the rest of it. So this figure here has been shown before. It is just a screenshot of the process for Texas Water Development Board to get any additional funds for task 5B, which is analyzing the water management strategies. We need to hold a public meeting to approve the actual scope and authorize us to submit both to Cheryl and Texas Water Development Board to actually get that additional scope. As a reminder, the board has already awarded the amount, the dollar amount, for the entire task 5B. So the question's not about the dollars, it's just saying that that you as a regional water planning group are approving that we can move forward with actually analyzing these water management strategies based on the TM as our starting point. As a reminder, in the October meeting, these items were already approved as part of the scope and are not included in our 5B submittal. So we've already received approval for, a lot of these were ones that were not necessarily targeted to a need, specifically like water conservation strategies is across, putting some money and scope in there for us to be doing database entry for all of these tables in the TM. So these were already approved. So now based on that list of all those potentially feasible strategy categories, what else is left? So these were some of the other categories that are included currently. There's a large table if somebody wants to sit there and squint at it. It's a handout on the meeting documents, as well as if somebody wants to read through this here. But this is the format the Texas Water Development Board requires us to submit for scope release. So basically we took all the other different types that we had not received information, that we did not have specific ones. Actually, this was from last time too. Some of this was, but we went and put dollar amounts of what we thought it would take to analyze each of these different types based on the total number that's already been awarded. They just want to break down to justify how we're spending this money and where we're putting our efforts, just to make sure that everybody is looking at all the categories that are required. So the only thing that really is required by this group today is just to say, yes, we approve that you may proceed forward with the work of analyzing these different strategies with this dollar amount. Again, it's already been awarded by the board to the Regional Water Planning Group. It's just releasing us and giving us a notice to proceed to actually continue forward with this effort, which will be the bulk of our work over the next 6 to 9 months.
And the scope is tasks 6 through 13 is presented on the sheet.
Correct. So these are the subtasks that are listed as Texas Water Development Board has them. So we've already been approved for items 1 through 5 that we put on here. All of these fall under the actual task 5B for the whole regional water planning process.
So I'll make a motion that we approve consultant to move forward with task 5B, subtask 6 through 13 as laid out.
Although we do need to pause real quick, I do believe that we are required to do public comment on this one, just in case anybody has anything before we move.
Before we take Mr. Hall's motion, are there any comments out there regarding moving forward on 5B? Anybody online? No hands coming up. Doesn't look like we have any comments. Now we'll accept Mr. Hall's motion to approve.
Did it include all those three itemized areas under action?
Yeah, so those actions are going to be to actually submit the notice to proceed request, well, for City of Nacogdoches to submit it to Texas Water Development Board and execute a contract amendment back to us, allowing us to provide any clarification requests the Texas Water Development Board may have related to this, and then allow City of Nacogdoches to actually give us the contract amendment, which basically just says, yes, you may continue. Do all that.
Okay. Scott has amended his motion to include the action items on that slide. Do we have a second? I'm going to give this one to Terry. He's been trying. We have a second. Any additional, and last chance again, any comments or questions in on this? Not hearing or seeing anybody? No hands going up online? Everybody in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Nobody opposed. Motion passes unanimously. And that is the meat of the day. We thank you very much, Bridget and Jordan. Next item is item 12, reports from other state agencies. Texas Water Development Board, Mr. Bookout, any good updates?
It has to be good.
Yeah,
Only good ones.
good stuff, okay. We'll talk about loan applications then. We've had several from this area that we're currently evaluating. I don't have a list of those. I couldn't get my computer to work properly last night, or I would have done that. The Texas Water Fund that was approved in Proposition 6 last time we voted, that fund is just beginning to be organized. Rules have to be drafted, and so we've created a web page that's accessible through our Development Board main web, but you can look at the schedule of development for those rules. We're seeking public input. The board is actually going to be holding workshops for that fund on how you access it, when you can access it, and all those things, which I don't know the answer to. We've got a fact sheet there that you can look up questions that people have filed over the last 6 months, and we answer them, so your question might be answered there. Also, it's that time of year where the board goes around with their financial assistance workshops. That is also online. If you go to the main page of the board and click on Regional Financial Assistant Workshop, you'll see a schedule there. And you can see where they try to hold them in all parts of Texas, so you'll see they're scattered all over the place. So you can wait for one to occur in your area if you like. Our SWIFT applications for this year, or this part of the year, were received on the 1st of this month. So we're evaluating those applications now. I don't recall whether anyone from Region I submitted one of those types of applications. Also, our water use survey, well, I say our, but it's the TCEQ and Water Development Board water use survey for 2023 is due the 1st of next month. So anybody that wants a loan application, they have to be current in filing that. Most of the folks that we've received are current through 2022, but this is the collection time for the 2023 water use survey. And we also have a agricultural water conservation grant period open for applications through 4/3, April 3rd. And there are informational webinars that are being posted. If you want to go and click on our webpage and then go to the agricultural water conservation section, you'll see that informational webinars that they have there and the type of grants that those are associated with. And that's it.
Thank you, sir. Texas Department of Parks and Wildlife, Mr. Lang.
Good morning. So Terry was well aware of this because he actually came down as a concerned public citizen and testified on behalf of sea trout populations in Texas last month in January. But we did have a recent change. We're now at a 3-fish limit, 15-inch minimum and 20-inch maximum, with only one fish over 30 inches. And that went into effect primarily because of the last freeze event that we had in January. And it's interesting, one of the things that we're seeing in time that these events are starting to occur more frequently. And because of that, saltwater species are more susceptible to those freeze events. So this is a temporary order. We are looking at potentially enacting a trout stamp, just like we have for redfish. In fact, there's even one proposal of having like a swing stamp. Since you already have a stamp on your license for one oversized fish for redfish, maybe we can just use that as a swing tag for an oversized speckled trout as well. Now, these regulations, again, have nothing to do with water, but I just thought it's interesting because, you know, the upper Sabine, or our upper part of the Texas coast where the Sabine and Neches outflow, and we've always had to try to deal with concurrent regulations or more liberalized regulations in Louisiana. But this will be the first time we're trying to enact this statewide to protect the trout fishery. So I just thought that would be something just interesting to share. I'd like to support your proposal or your nomination for Jenny Sanders. Jenny Sanders is the Texas Longleaf Team leader. She works very closely with us for Texas public land enhancement for longleaf pine. We are actually working with the Shortleaf Pine Initiative, which is another southeastern initiative, to actually combine those into a potential just single open forest management strategy. So even though you have a WMS that actually identifies in 2.2 as brush management as not being a feasible water management strategy because of lack of invasives, there are a lot of native invasives in East Texas, which means that you have brush encroachment, i.e. yaupon or other species that the stem density is so high it does affect water availability on the landscape. That's why things like the Burning Association that I discussed at the last meeting, or all of our other cooperative programs that we do with private landowners, could be feasible if that landscape practice continues. So one of the things that we'd like to potentially provide for y'all, I kind of brainstormed this morning, we have probably roughly anywhere from 15 to 20 different habitat delivery programs that private landowners participate in. I'm going to try to task our staff, developers, and programs to actually get some what are the water availability models that are used in those. So if we're doing brush management encroachment, if we're doing reduced stem density, if we're doing planting of native grasses, if we're doing reduction of you know, both native or non-native brush species, how does that equate to water modeling? And I just thought that would be some interesting information to be able to provide for the group. And then the very last thing is kind of to clarify some of the stuff in regards to our acquisitions. So we have the Centennial Fund that's available. We also have that separate $100 million that was set aside to replace very specifically Fairfield Lake State Park, which we are looking for a park somewhere within a 60 to 100 mile radius of Fairfield to essentially replace commensurate recreation. So we're actually looking for another property that has a lake. Small lake, typically where we can have, controlled access, but if we can't get that, even if it's just access to an existing water body, where we can enhance or provide another recreation type. Also, when we're doing other targeted recreation acquisitions, we're looking at properties that have some type of, again, conservation value, but not necessarily enlarge our operational footprint, meaning that one of the properties we're looking at is the Piney Woods Mitigation Bank. Because that property is already set aside in perpetuity for management, and the only thing that we would be doing there is facilitating and managing public access. It's already set aside for conservation. We don't necessarily need to increase that footprint. We just need to help manage the footprint that's already on the landscape. The other one that we're looking at is Tonquist Sandhills, which is actually a property that's just north of Nacogdoches watershed. And so what that would do is that would actually provide management strategies or landscape management that would enhance, say, water yield within that reservoir. we're actually looking at potentially partnering with Stephen F. Austin State University of using that property as an environmental laboratory. And I actually have a presentation with UT's Board of Regents and Presidents in March to facilitate that type of proposal. So again, we're looking to see how we can actually partner for proper environmental stewardship, which in this case would include, water management and water availability. So just to kind of show you where we're kind of, starting to look at things, collectively on the landscape. But if anybody knows of anything that's really cheap, fun place that, we'd like to purchase for people to go recreate on, we're always looking. We do have a long laundry list of people that are knocking on our door. I mean, everybody from the grandchild that says, my grandma would really want my, our family's 6 acres to go to y'all for something, and that's not useful, but other stuff we're willing to entertain. And that's why, again, going forward, any water management strategy that would potentially construct a new reservoir in any part of the state, our agency is interested in trying to figure out how we can partner with recreation and public use management, because I know that's just a secondary use of water resource development, but a lot of times in hindsight, those things are not planned for ahead of time. I can't make any promises from the agency, but there's a lot of us that are actually looking at how can we assist potentially in pass-through grant opportunities to provide monies so that when those permits are being acquired and studied, that we can actually provide the money that actually helps plan for or offset those recreation or public use impacts. And so I like to use this example. So at Bodark Reservoir, they didn't plan for anything. So we kind of came in hindsight once they're ready to do everything, and they're like, well, we didn't plan for it because we didn't permit it. And so then you go to the Corps, and the Corps says, well, the permit doesn't say you can do it, but it doesn't say you can't do it. And so you kind of have to reopen that. With Ralph Hall, we actually got in soon enough that we could actually assist with that and kind of help build off of the program. So, whenever Lake Columbia really does get ramped up and we're able to potentially help assist with access, boat ramps, fish structure, public hunting, regulating hunting, even if you don't want hunting, it is a water reservoir, so duck hunters are going to be beating the doors down. But if you want to be able to regulate where that's used as a public use strategy, that's what we'd like to be able to offer coming forward. So I don't think I've ever presented this early before. It's usually after lunch. So
What's your acreage range that y'all are looking at? You said 6 acres is way too small.
Realistically for a state park, somewhere between probably 1,200 or 1,500 acres up to 5,000 acres for a state park. I mean, if you think of Tyler, Dangerfield, Martin Dives, if you think about some of those small parks, we get constrained, and obviously as our human population increases, recreation opportunities need to increase commensurate with that. But not that money is no object, but obviously we have funds now that we have never had before as an agency.
But y'all can't pay above appraised value, right?
That's correct. Typically we use a Yellow Book appraisal, which is a little more constraining than a regular real estate appraisal. But we only have to do that if we bring in any additional federal funding. We can just use a standardized real estate appraisal, but we cannot pay above that appraised value. That is correct. We can in a few instances. And what we have to do is go before our commission, state what the value is that we're able to pay through the appraisal process. And then if we have some other additional outside fund, in-kind donation or something to go above and beyond that, then that's the only way we can bring that in. And that's usually, though, only at a reasonable amount. And just to give an example, we just had a property in the Trinity River Basin, floodplain, that Yellow Book appraised at $4,100 an acre. And that just seems insane, because 3 or 4 years ago, same area, you were looking at maybe $1,800 to $2,500 at the most. So it's almost doubled in price.
Floodplain.
Floodplain.
Steve, you said when you're looking at the big maps, look at the big map where the parks already are, and then look for gaps.
Yeah, look for holes.
Look for holes. If we don't try to put one right next to Tyler State Park or something like that.
No, and if we do have to operate that, so like the conception was at, say, at Bodark or Ralph Hall, it's close enough already existing to the Cooper Complex or Bonham State Park that we would actually operate that as a satellite unit of that park structure. So we wouldn't necessarily have to replicate supervisory structures. We just put, rangers and daily operators in those areas. But it's a fun time for us. We actually just hired like 6 just people to go plan this kind of stuff.
Flush.
Well, right now there is not, but if we pursue the Tonquah Sandhills property, then we could potentially look at that. But it's just, again, there's so many things out there. Obviously we're going to go after low-hanging fruit first, but anytime we can get some type of, not necessarily insider information, but early information to start that process, that would be great.
Thank you, sir. Next on the list is Texas Department of Agriculture. Is Mr. Martinez out there?
Well, it's not here today. Maybe I'm
Okay. How about Texas Soil and Water Conservation Board? Mr. Watson? Negatory there. Groundwater management areas. Mr. McFarland, any updates on GMA 11?
No update on GMA 11. We are planning a meeting in April of this year, and this board will be notified of that date.
Thank you, sir. As for GMA 14, they will be meeting on the 29th of this month. At our previous meeting, we were discussing asking the Water Development Board to allow the GMA to use an alternate to the new model they're adopting, and we have a draft scope of work put together. And at this upcoming meeting, we'll also be discussing a resolution that specifically asks the Water Development Board to allow us to do that. And again, that's on February 29th. It'll be in Conroe if anybody's interested. That's all I have. Agenda item 13, general discussion. Anybody have anything they would like to add to our meeting today? Nobody out there in the virtual world. I don't see any hands popping up or anything. Moving right along then. Item number 14, next meeting date. Miss Bridget Jordan, what are you thinking?
I have a list of, basically, we have a year. Like I said earlier, March 4th is when of this year is when the TM is due, up till March 3rd of 2025 when the IPP initial prepared plan is due. Any meetings we have before and in between that next year time is completely up to you guys. I have a tentative list up here, basically kind of going back to what we were doing before all this TM approval stuff picked up, where we were kind of going quarterly. Just to break up this IPP into sizable chunks, we've already have drafts being prepared or already done for chapters 1, 2, and are working on chapters 3 and 4A. And can provide status updates by county for the water management strategies, which will be included as task 5 and 7. So this is just looking at kind of quarterly updates, and a breakdown of what we would probably present at each of those is listed on the slide here. The only one that really probably has no wiggle room is by the time, same timeline as this one, we probably will need to meet in February of 2025 to actually get public comment and approval of the the initial prepared plan to submit by the March 3rd deadline. The other 3 meetings on there, spring, fall, and winter, are completely up to the Regional Water Planning Group on when you guys would like to meet and how often you would like to meet, knowing that we do need to probably go county by county, a few chunks at a time during each of these meetings to walk through the strategies by county. So that's up to you guys.
May, June, and then August, September. Are you suggesting a meeting for each one of those?
No, just generally in that time, I would say sometime in May or June, a late spring one, give us a few months to get some ground going again on the water management strategies. Okay. But that's pretty flexible. Late spring, early summer, probably for the next one.
Okay.
At least just give a status update. No action really is going to be required on any of that.
Okay, so at this point, we're just essentially stitching together the IPP and all the data.
We're just making it into bite-sized chunks, kind of like this, instead of trying to go through the whole TM at one go and being here for 4 hours like Brazos G was. We wanted to make it kind of quick and painless at the end there. So we're trying to break it up for you guys so we're not miserable in February.
So does anybody have any thoughts on when they'd like to meet? In theory, by the looks of it, we could probably combine those first two into one fall meeting, maybe? Do we need to meet before fall?
I don't think we have any, pretty much sometime before September, we would like to just meet to there's a small chunk on 5B scope that we would like to get released for this last amendment that you guys got from the board. But that can happen anytime before September 1st.
Before
So,
September, okay, so.
Well, I mean, we can't access that money until September 1st, so for that particular piece, there's no reason, we don't need approval anytime before then, we can't invoice for it anyway. So it's just how long you guys want to meet for that first one. So we could combine them and just kind of have a longer, meatier meeting in the fall if you don't want to meet until then.
Do you think combining those first two would be too long for a meeting? Could it take us?
I don't think so. We might want to try to have maybe a technical committee call sometime in the summer just to bounce some ideas off of some of y'all, but I don't think we need to meet with the whole collective group here necessarily, unless you feel differently.
Yeah, I guess the plan was to submit like all those chapters to y'all, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. So if y'all are okay with reviewing all those ahead of those meetings and just discussing it through it, I think we can condense it down to one. It'll just be a lot of.
And that could just be mostly online. We would send out the chapters and you guys can, send comments beforehand as you find them.
So what do y'all think? You think we can have one longer meeting to deal with chapters 1 through 7 essentially, sometime mid-September? Does that work?
You need before September 1?
It doesn't have to, no, it's just sometime.
I'm just thinking, give everybody a break through summer. I assume summer, most people see through August, then get back down to work again in the early fall, which would be September. Does that seem to work for everybody? It may be a long meeting, but it'll give us a bit of a break.
I just want one of those jobs where I don't have to work during the summer. Where do you find one? In the water business, no less.
Yeah, no doubt.
John, the second Thursday in September is September the 12th.
Thursday would be the 12th.
Are we locked in on Thursdays or Wednesdays?
I'm not locked in on any particular day, but there's been a pattern over the years.
It's always been Wednesdays.
Wednesdays?
For a long time, but
Yeah,
it's.
but it depends on if this room is
Correct.
available too.
Correct.
And Kate, what days are your meetings? Talk.
Yeah, we have council meetings on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of every month, so I'm unavailable all morning
So
on
what's the
those
third
days.
Wednesday then look like? You got that calendar up, John? Third Wednesday?
Third Wednesday of September is September the 18th.
18. Do you want to check on that real quick, Cheryl?
This far out,
I mean, we're first, right?
right?
For us. Yeah. They didn't give y'all. Yeah, they sent us an email, said May 13th.
Will you be updating, making these chapters available as you move through them? Or are you going to try and
I
do
guess
it
while
in
we're waiting
big
for her to
chunks?
come back, I guess it's kind of up to you on how you, I know, at least for like chapter 1, we had kind of been sending you the first pass. Would you prefer us to go ahead and put drafts online to send a link to the whole group for everybody to review it once?
Because all I'm doing when you send it to me is, again, what I mentioned earlier. I know very little about surface water, so I focus on
Right.
what areas I do have good knowledge on, and I look and I glean through those. I mean, I look at all of it, but I focus on certain areas. So again, making them available to the whole group and have each one of them have the ability to
Well, we
go
can make,
through
we can
from
make a
the
link,
get-go.
a folder within the meeting documents, then and just, as we have pieces up there, we can have Cheryl send a blast out to you guys and say, hey, chapter 1's out there ready for you guys, chapter 2 is ready, and
That'd be
as you have comments, go through it, and so maybe we'll just do it that way.
September 18th works. Great.
There is something in here
If we're not done by
We'll be
then,
done,
shoot
trust
me. So Wednesday, it's the third Wednesday, September. Shoot for 10 o'clock again, and we'll keep everybody updated with regards to chapters as they come available. And I think, unless anybody has anything to add, we'll move along to item 15, adjournment. Have a great one, everybody. I appreciate you.
They're all gonna be gone.